Well, exactly. So it was just one night, was it? And then in the day she was okay. Because we were there we go. Morning. Okay, so feet apart, hip width, arms by the sides. Checking the line that runs through the gap between the second and third toe. So the parallel line you're looking for is one you imagine you're standing on. And that line, or those lines, will run through the gap between, as I say, the second and third toe and out to the middle of the heel. Shoulders drop, face relaxes, pelvic floor, intelligent or conversational tone. Perhaps there's movement, investigative movement, whether it be of the pelvis and therefore of the weight ratios on the feet, or whether it be in addition or instead of lifting and replacing the feet in various ways. Coming online regarding the foot arches, medial, lateral, transverse, medial big toe side, lateral little toe side, transverse across the foot. Crown of the head as if, and all yoga teachers say this, and there's good reason for them to do so because it's good, as if you're being pulled up by, let's say today, by a golden thread, a sparkling golden thread, pulling you up by the crown of the head consistently. Now, it doesn't have to do anything at first, because at first the body has to agree to that, it has to realign itself a little bit. So you just keep imagining you're being pulled up consistently. So where there are disagreements, in other words, habits that are different to the present moment, those habits become exposed. And as a result of being exposed, they gradually dissipate. So we've got this sense of the crown of the head and the pelvic floor. We're going to imagine there are balloons inflating under the arms. We can feel from the feet to the pelvic floor, from the pelvic floor to the crown of the head. And as you get about halfway or so, you want to turn the palms forwards and eventually up. Allow any movements that are conducive to flow in the present moment. Lightly tone the tum. It sucks in and lifts up. So I often do things like lift the big toe side of one foot and then the big toe side of the other foot. Or sometimes I bend one knee and then bend the other knee, because it makes the body drift. And as it drifts, I can find stray muscles or stray fibers, we could say, that I can incorporate over time. So light toning the tummy, finding the pelvic floor, eyes soft, brain soft, looking for a sense of connection between the pelvic floor and the crown of the head, which is a sort of, we call it conversational, but we can go further and say it's loving, a loving connection between the pelvic floor and the crown of the head. Big circle, hands to the heart center, to catch a deep breath. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft, step or jump, up to you. I'm jumping today, I must be feeling lively. And chest lifting, jaw soft, light tone of the tummy again. Left toes in and lifting the right heel first, turning on the ball of the right foot and finishing off the turn on the right heel. Checking that you've got heel to arch alignment. Stretching, energetically speaking, or expanding maybe is a better word, energetically speaking, into the back and front leg simultaneously as you inhale, exhale, bend your knee. Allow for quite a bit of play if you find it useful. For example, heel lifting, toe lifting, just to kind of feel into agreement. This is Virabhadrasana number 2. The elbow comes down, the palm goes up, and we go up and over. I like to lift my back heel, and then I get more stretch. Now, by like, I don't mean to say that it's softly, pleasant necessarily, but I like the wake up that it brings. And that wake up, of course, is waking up from habit patterns. When we talk about waking up, when we talk about Buddha, for example, it means waking up from being controlled otherwise by habit patterns. If you have lifted the heels and stretched the fingers, you then bring the heel back down again, but keep the fingers stretched. Arm down, palm down, push into the leg, inhale to come up. Feet face forwards, hands on the hips. Check the alignment of your toes, that they're at the same alignment from the front of the mat, they're equidistant. Breathing deep, back toes in, front foot and leg out on the ball of the foot, finish off the turn on the heel. I think this is the first week that I've done this when it's actually light from the get-go. It's kind of cool, although I slightly miss it being dark and a bit sort of Christmassy. Stretch the arms. Breathe through your nose, chest lifting. Can you feel the ribs lifting? When you feel the ribs lifting, of course, you can feel the lower back muscles lifting. Play with that intuitively, naturally. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Inhale. Exhale, bend your knee, but stretch into your back leg. Play with those stretches. So again, Virabhadrasana. Vira plus Bhadra plus Asana makes Virabhadrasana. So it means something like a strong hero. Elbow down if you're ready, palm up, look up, stretch up. And of course, you don't have to stretch over, but it can be nice to do that. It's a good stretch for the side of the body. Pajva Konasana, Pajva plus Kona plus Asana. Pajva meaning the side. If you press gently into your leg with your forearm, the chest will turn. And whether or not that's something you want to do more of or less of, or experiment with. The back heel can lift if you want that extra va-va room. And then stretch the fingers and bring the heel down without losing the stretch in the fingers. We're still calm, even though the sensations are intense. Great. We're coming down to Adho Mukha Svanasana, slow and calm. Hands either side of your foot and step back into your down face dog. Breathe through the nose if you can. Pad your paws, that is to say your hands, into a deeper weave, which is both deeper on a sort of physical level, but also deeper on a sort of psychological level, a sense of arriving. So you can imagine as you
Perhaps lift and replace your hands like a cat patting its paws. That just like a cat patting its paws, you're arriving as a result. You're able to settle in more as a result. So we're imagining we're meshing the molecules of the palms of the hands with the molecules of the mat. And that's very meditative. Regarding the heels, you can bend your knees, extend your knees, move your pelvis left to right. Some people, after a while, and perhaps not the first down face dog of the day, but some people after a while want to experiment with the heels going back to see if they can feel, to see if you can feel, if you want to do it, the inner groin going up relationally. So the heel back, groin up. And I have to repeat it lots of times before I can really feel it. So I have to bend and then re-extend and then bend and then re-extend, and lots and lots of times. We eventually want energy going up. And the spine actually sort of hangs down from the uplift eventually, including the neck. Okay, we'll come forwards to hands and knees, Bhamanasana, which means table pose, although nearly all yoga books these days and yoga teachers translate it as tabletop. I have no idea why. But it just means table, Bhaman, or Bhamana. And we're just moving the pelvis just to intimate looseness and ease and breath flow. And of course, this massages the wrists, which is you can get into. It instructs the breath to loosen, which you can get into. Okay, we're going to pop up again into Adho Mukha Svanasana when you're ready, down face dog. So as soon as you're ready, pop up with calmness as your company. Calmness is your company. And then investigation. We have to be mindful, I think, that even good actions that were good yesterday might not be good today. So we need, instead of acting on assumptions or out of habit, to be fresh every time we do yoga. I remember many years ago, a yoga teacher saying that to me, and I thought, oh yeah, that's great. That sounds great. But I just thought it sounded great. Like, you've never done this pose before. I thought, great, that sounds great. But I took it as a sort of sound bite, but didn't take it in, at the time anyway. So in down face dog, breathe in a way that imagine this is what it is, new. So if it is new, the best modality is to be open, in other words, receptive. And in Vajrasati Yoga, we often call that listening. And even, there's different ways to listen. Radio telescopes listen, don't they? They receive. Mm. And when we notice listening, there's always response. Mm. Okay, well done. Come down to hands and knees, and from there to kneeling. So you might want to put a block between the heels and buttocks, and you might want to put a rolled up blanket underneath your ankles. So rolled up blanket underneath the ankles will stop foot cramping or prevent it a bit, and will stop pain in the ankles, and will stop overstretch there. And the block will help look after the knees if they're tight. We've got one hand on top of the other. The pose is called Vajrasana. And we're breathing through the nose. So jaw soft, eyes soft, shoulders down, brain relaxed, tongue soft, even the edges of the tongue. Natural, easy breathing. Okay, we'll do a popular pose. When I say it's popular, I mean it's popular with very, very few people out of all the people that do yoga. So let's stretch our legs out. We're facing to the midline of the room if we're roomers. And Zoomers, you can face the midline of the room if you want, but it doesn't really matter. From here, we're going to come into some people's favorite, Parapurna Navasana. So, as I say, very, very low population of people who would count it as their favorite. Lean back, raise the legs up. You can keep them bent if you need to, that's fine. And arms extended forwards. And then, good luck. Breathe into it, be calm, let there be subtle movement. Parapurna means full. Nava is a boat. BKS Iyengar suggests
60 seconds in this pose. Thanks, BKS Iyengar. We've probably been here for about 33, guessing. But let's just pretend we've been here for 55 seconds now. Don't forget to breathe. Okay, bend your legs. Hug your legs. Lift up your lumbar. Well done. And take deep breaths. Sometimes rocking, but again, what we don't want to do ever is institutionalize anything, right? You know, views and opinions or anything at all. So it's interesting actually, there's a wonderful text in the Pali Canon, which is the canon of the Theravadan tradition. And the text is all about views. And actually, I posted it on my social media network the other week, and it got very, very few likes. And I guess because, you know, it's a bit Buddhist-y, waffles on a bit, but also, you know, we're taught that views and opinions are something we should have, and we should have lots of them. But in the Buddhist paradigm, we should be letting go of views and opinions or holding them lightly, in fact. So that in the light of new information, we're able to release them. Okay, we're going to lay for a moment or two on our backs, which probably excited about already, with our hands underneath our head, as if we're on holiday. You got it. Fingers interlaced. Take a couple of extra deep breaths. Yeah, jaw soft. Lower back soft. Temples soft. Eyes soft. Observing. So we say that listening, and it always comes with response. You know, it just comes with response. It's like going to a chip shop and, it always coming with salt and vinegar. You don't have to pay extra for that. It always comes with that. Okay, flex the hips. That means lift the feet, sorry. Lift the feet. Breathe through the nose. And perhaps you can feel your lower back is just come into a slightly better contact with the floor, which often we find nice. And we can add to that niceness intuitively if it comes. So we might roll the pelvis, for example. When we talk about intuition, it can be difficult to know what intuition is because of the noise, the white noise, as it were, that thinking makes. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, thinking all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I can't remember the amount of thoughts that we have, but it's something like 5 times more than the breaths that we take in the day. You know, there's a lot more thoughts than there are breaths. Now we're going to lift up our heads, and the lower back's more intimate with the floor. So instead of listening to thoughts, you leave thoughts alone. There's nothing at all wrong with them, but there's also nothing at all right with them. They're just thoughts. They're just mind spew. And that's what the mind does, and it's supposed to do. It's supposed to just commentate and offer and just churn away. So we learn to respect that. We learn to be kind to that. We learn to give that space, to leave that alone, so that we can then intuit. In other words, be open, not be biased by thoughts that themselves are arising because of previous conditions. We can intuit movements that are most absorbing, meditative. Now we're going to let the head come down in an eccentric contraction of the upper abdominals, and let the feet come down in an eccentric contraction of the lower abdominals. We're only going to touch the toes, not the heels. And as soon as we've landed the toes, we're going to lift up the head again and look towards the navel. Now we could take it further in a commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. It talks about contemplating the navel chakra, the Nabha chakra. So what does that mean here now? Feeling. It means feeling the navel area as a sort of center. So it's noticed that because the desire is to be centered, to be non-reactive, to be
free of karma, that there are visceral areas that you can rest in that are already that, like the Nabha chakra, the navel center. You can rest in it, you can abide in it. It's if you're sort of following the navel down to a sort of center point in the belly. Okay, head down when you're ready, heels down when you're ready. Deep breath comes by itself. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Good opportunity for a few more breaths just to let the pectoralis stretch out through the armpits as well. And then release your hands from behind your head and raise up one leg, doesn't matter which one. Interlace your fingers behind the thigh of that leg. Press the thigh into the hands and the hands into the thigh. Excuse me. And as you press the two, let the breath flow freely. And that's the ingredients. That's the only ingredients you need. Thigh into the hands, hands into the thigh. And then what sometimes happens is energy arises or arrives in the form of tingling, buzzing, temperature, fizzing. Energy arrives. Sometimes in the kneecaps, sometimes you can perceive it just below the kneecap in the upper shin. See if you can perceive that energy just below the kneecap in the upper shin, in the tibial tuberosity. And then draw that energy as you breathe freely. Don't forget it's essential to breathe freely. Draw that energy from the tibial tuberosity through the knee, through the thigh. And sometimes you get a feeling that the heel releases up. So, those words chosen, releases up. But remember, it won't work if your breath isn't free flow. Sometimes we don't free flow because we're trying too hard. We're using the wrong tool for the job. Okay, jolly good show. Bring that leg down. Lovely jubbly. I'll try to fit in some English stereotypes during class. I've already talked about chips. Okay, let's raise up the other leg when we're ready. Interlace the fingers. Take a breath or two. So you're sort of pointing the breath to a natural, free flow, spontaneous pattern. And staying with that natural, free flow, spontaneous pattern, press the thigh into the hands and the hands into the thigh. And that's the three ingredients. If you miss one, you haven't got the recipe. It's not going to come together. So if you only press the thigh into the hands, if you only press the hands into the thigh, or if you do both of those, but you don't free flow breathe, then it won't work. So other movements might come as well. That's fine, of course, that's fine. Again, as the energy begins to arrive in the front of the leg, it might arrive in the kneecap. It's quite subtle. Fizzing, buzzing, slight temperature change. As you feel that energy arrive and you breathe into it, then you imagine you comb it or brush it or draw it or stroke it upwards from the shin through the knee to the thigh repeatedly, never holding the breath. I think we need lots of reminders about the breath. And then sometimes it feels you just get that magic spot in the heel. Selflessly releases up. And there's that moment of selflessness. In other words, you're not tied down to your own particular brain chemistry or your own particular physiology or your own particular familial conditioning or your own particular cultural conditioning. So we're always looking for selflessness. Okay, bring that leg down when you're ready. Lovely. Take a deep breath. Hands can be where you like. For example, lower ribs, upper ribs, or anterior, superior iliac spine. Okay, we're going to lift up the feet. We're going to lift up the arms. And I quite like with the arms lifted up towards the ceiling to move the shoulder blades. So you move the arms sort of side to side, and you can move the shoulder blades like that. And we can both create a sense of space between the shoulder blades, so we're moving and stretching the rhomboids. We also massage other areas like the trapezius and the deltoids. And we also allow, as we continue to bring our arms over their head and sway side to side, the shoulder blades to move out and up, allowing the movement of the arms to be much easier. If we move the arms from the shoulder blades, of course, the arms are bedded into the shoulder blades at the glenoid fossa. Then this repeated movement gives you loads more movement than you might otherwise have had. Keep working on the shoulder blades. We talk about the bottom inner edge moving out and up, the bottom inner edge. So I could do that for ages, because I'm inviting more and more fibers. Then we're going to raise the legs up. We can still move the arms whenever you want. So this is Urdhva Prasrita Padasana. Very lovely sounding. Urdhva Prasrita Padasana sounds all sort of mystical and wonderful when you say it in Sanskrit. But when you say it in English, Urdhva just means up. Prasrita means extended. Pada means foot. Upwardly extend your feet. Now, we've talked about briefly the anterior superior iliac spine, the hip points beneath that is the anterior inferior iliac spine. And you're going to feel that because the rectus femoris is attached to it. That's one of your thigh muscles. So we're going to lower the legs. It's going to be partly the abdominals that help with the lowering, partly the hip flexors that help as they come into eccentric contraction to slow down the movement. So you might feel to the anterior inferior iliac spine. And you come down at your own pace. And once you're down, melt entirely. Melt entirely. Okay, so if I'm honest, I've got a slight obsession with the dark chocolate buttons from Infinity Foods around the corner here. They're a very expensive habit to have. But if you visualize a chocolate button and you left it out on a table in the sun, even if that chocolate button, and now we're imagining it to be sentient, which slightly puts me off eating them, but not enough. We can imagine that chocolate button wanting to keep its identity as a disc. I'm a disc, but the sun won't have it. And even if the button manages to pull itself together, and that's a saying we have, isn't it? Pull yourself together. For a moment or two, the sun is relentless. So our self-shape, that was I am this, is constantly being melted by life. So to viscerally represent that, let yourself melt like a chocolate button here and now, like your whole body was a chocolate button. Okay, it's nice, quite fun melting. Let's bend our legs and roll over. If you're in the room here, if you're a roomer, face towards the Buddha. We've got a fairly minimalist shrine. We don't need much on the shrine with that marvelous picture. And unusually, and perhaps for the first time ever at the Brighton Buddhist Centre, there's an antler on the shrine. Pourquoi? I don't know. I think some pagans got in. Anyway, in fact, I do know. I'm pretending I don't know. There was what's his name? Oh God, Dhamma is that his name? Yeah. He was here and he did a shamanistic Buddhist full moon puja to white Tara the other day. And I don't know for sure that it's him that brought in the white antler, but I suspect him of it. Anyway, we're going to roll around, breathe through the nose. And see if we can find some sensations that are hopefully, rich enough. Sometimes I lament, sometimes I've got a really rich sort of tenderness, and sometimes I lament because I haven't. But if you roll, you might find something towards the front of your thigh even that feels a bit more, when you feel it, you can't describe it, actually. You can only express it. Language becomes expressive. So this rolling around is very, very useful for the iliotibial tract, particularly if you breathe into it, particularly if you find rich sensations to wipe the slate clean, as it were. I don't know if you feel the same thing. I didn't even really realize that I enjoyed this as much as I do, but I really enjoy watching people wipe a dry wipe marker board clean, or a chalkboard, and I enjoy doing it myself as well. So that's the sort of pointer to emptiness, which allows us to be spontaneous in the moment. Now we're going to pick up the top leg when you're ready. So getting yourself to a balanced position. We're going to play with the top leg between the vertical and the horizontal planes. And we're looking to hydrate. Movement we know hydrates. We're also looking to tune out / tune in. So there's several things going on. The adductor muscles, brevis longus magnus and others, are getting stretched between the pubic bone and the inner thigh, and massaged too. So if they're hypertonic or habitually tense, they'll keep putting the knee in. But if you can massage them into a looser condition, the knee will be able to extend more evenly without any twist. We're also turning the muscles on the other side, which helps to release the inner thigh muscles more. We're also squishing and releasing the hip flexors, which softens them so that when we take our hand to our foot, we can do just that, rather than taking the foot to the hand. So an incorrect movement would be that. It's not evil, or, it's just not quite what we want. The correct movement takes longer, because you've got to kind of wait until this tissue is soft enough for you to be able to reach. Obviously, longer arms make a difference too. Long arms and short legs make it really easy. And then we can begin to experiment with raising the leg if we want. But breath is the guru. In other words, we don't care what our thinking's telling us. We don't care what our teachers are telling us. I mean, we love our teachers and thoughts are respected, but we serve the breath in yoga. Serve the breath. Breathing, breathing, breathing. Good job, everyone. Marvelous. If you're ready to bring the leg down, then do so. We'll have a moment, like a little curled up moment. And let it be a moment, let it curl yourself up into a little ball. Focus on the Nabha chakra, the belly center. Okay, we have to come up now, because sometimes those moments turn into full-on sleeps. Come up from the side, turn around, so you're still facing the front of the room, and lay on your other side. Similarly, extend as much as you can and roll. Once you've extended, first extend the ribs, extend the armpit, and then you can get into a bit of rolling. And again, you're looking for sensations that are strong enough to overwhelm the habit patterns. And as I mentioned, our own habit patterns are chemical, physiological. We all have, our brains have certain conditions. Homo sapien brains are all similar, but not the same. So, there's chemical and biological conditionings that we get caught in, and then there's familial biases, the culture of our families, and then there's conditioning from our particular life story, and so on. And getting stuck in that is why there's war in the world. why there's opposition, because we think we're telling the truth because what we see, we say, I'm saying what I'm seeing. But what we're seeing is particular to us because it's conditioned. And of course, there's overlaps. Sometimes we see, quite often we see the same things. We can all agree, oh, there's the ocean and it's wet, But other times we see different things, don't we? So here we want to wipe the slate clean, as it were, and we need sensations that are rich enough. And what moments we call spiritual are often moments where something's happened that's so rich that we can't, or we forget to be caught up in our programs. And then when we forget to be caught up in our programs, we remember who we are, which is not male, female, young, old, conditioned in any way. Now, I could roll around for a while, enjoy that. But we'll come back to the upright and bring our leg into play between the horizontal and vertical planes. Breathing through the nose. And we know what we're doing, we're hydrating. So we can feel there's a sort of looseness comes. And because we're yogis, we understand and we can feel that more looseness in the body and the breath will also bring more looseness in the mind. In other words, we won't be grasping mind stuff and sort of claiming it as my own. This is the skill we're looking for. We're not looking to, become a better person, have a better mind or a better psychology or anything, that happens by itself. What we're looking for is to be not caught up in the particulars of the mind. And then the mind sorts itself out because we're not caught up, we're not driving patterns ever deeper. Again, we're going to reach when we're ready for the big toe. Some self-discipline is useful, especially for me. So most of us, one of our conditionings is impatience. And I'm sure computers and phones haven't made that any better. So we relearn patience and we don't go down the path of impatience. You can extend and bend the leg if you want. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. The leg doesn't have to be straight. It can remain bent or it can play between the two. All that matters is flow. All that matters is flow. Conditioning can be like clouds in the sky, Our conditioned tendencies are all allowed. But we're the sky, not the clouds. Okay, super plus duper equals super duper. Now bring the legs down, knees up. Let's have a moment. Little snuggly moment. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft, brain soft. Then we're going to come up from the side, cool, calm, collected, ready for Upavishta Konasana. For that, most people are best off on a block. But if you're someone who takes the legs fairly wide and without closing the spine can forward fold, then you don't need a block. But if after say 30 degrees of forward folding you start rounding, then you should sit on a block. And that's most people. As I say, the block should be skirif, that is to say the corner should face forwards. And that allows the top of the thighs to drop down. So I'll sit on a block as well, just to make that clear. The distance that the feet should be away from each other is conditioned by a couple of factors. It's not the widest stride that is taken in a yoga posture. That's a pose called Samakonasana. But we go wide as wide as we can and take the toes. Now, if you can't take the toes where you are, take the legs closer and closer, closer, closer until you can take the toes. And if you can't take the toes, no matter how close your legs are, then the solution is easy. Don't take the toes. So you go to wherever you can, hold the toes. If you can't, you go closer. Okay, now I can. And if you can't at any point, you don't. So it's easy. You can't go wrong. Now, if you don't take the toes in any way, we're all going to release the toes now, because that's just a gauge of measurement. We're all going to take our hands cupped, right, like that, and then turn them around behind us, and that rolls the shoulders. And with the right attitude towards the body as we find it, we're going to lift the lower back and move left and move right. Head is up. We sometimes forget that the head is part of the same energy channel, that we want to reverence the goddess. That's I think a useful metaphor. And let's not forget, everything we say in life is just a symbol of the reality, not the reality itself. So if you think of your central channel as the goddess channel, as her temple, as it were, and you want to respect her because she is the goddess, she's the mother, she's the earth goddess, she's also the liberator. She is Prakriti, she liberates the Purusha in Sankhya Yoga, in Patanjali Yoga. She is the seen, as it's sometimes referred to, that which is seen or perceived. Now we're going to lift and turn towards our right foot, listen and respond to the body. If you've done this pose before, assumptions may arise. So try to relax, be open, wipe the dry wipe marker free. So it's, pure and white. And of course, one cannot wipe the dry wipe marker board clean oneself, because there's still you there. It has to happen through surrender into something rich. So that's why we stretch in yoga, but we don't just stretch in yoga. If you read older texts that we can call yoga texts, like the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, they recommend things like getting a piercing. Just noticing the sensation of getting a piercing. Now, I guess there's a limit to how many piercings you can have, although there's some people in Brighton that are already testing that limit. But, the point is, it doesn't have to just be a piercing. It can be any rich sensation, like tasting something on the tongue, or feeling a stretch in a yoga pose. Okay, lift and turn to the other leg, and feel energy streaming back to the one behind you. So rich sensations, that's what we're looking for. And so comparing yourself to someone else is pointless. Someone else may have more, a wider range of motion, but the richness of sensation is the same. Someone might need to extend quite far forwards to get a rich enough sensation, but you might be getting a rich enough sensation where you are. And if that's the case, then you're becoming a great yogin. If you can feel enough from any sensation that's rich. You could, we're here in the Buddhist Centre, we could surrender to the sound of the pattering rain. That's a rich sensation that could eat us, and we could enter into the field of emptiness that way. Wunderbar. Return to center with your fingers on the floor ahead of you, and breathe through the nose. See if you can keep open all the way along the anterior spine. So first of all, you've got to start being open along the anterior spine. You can't keep being open if you're not open now. So open up from pubis through tummy to chest, as much as you can. It might be just on your fingertips. Get as tall as you can. Now, some people feel they can go a little further forwards, folding over the top of the thighs and not change that openness.
That's fine. If that's comfortable, you want to, that's fine. As I said, sitting on a block, if you're someone who does come forwards a long way, can become, not useful anymore. Certainly after 30 degrees forwards, it's not so comfortable. So for some people. Okay, wherever you are, we'll come up and slow and easy out as well. Good job. Okay, come to hands and knees when you're ready. Take a breath or two there. Check your hands are equidistant from the sides and the front of the mat. Have a look at the middle fingers. Make sure they face directly forwards and spread your fingers out. Make your hands look symmetrical, mirror images of each other, if they are mirror images of each other. I know not everyone has mirror image hands, but if you do, as much as possible. Okay, and then lift up and pad your paws, your hands, into the mat. And we talked about imagining and feeling. So that brings a sort of arriving feeling. So repetition and breath. And sometimes within that, the movement between the left hand and the right hand is also a movement of the pelvis to the left and the right. So it serves a sort of dual function. In time, with all the energy streaming upwards, like a sort of reverse waterfall, it streams upwards through the armpits to the top of the thighs. If you get enough of that upward stream, it then brings a downward stream, a downward release of the spinal column, which can then sort of hang. So it's like being sort of hung up by the top of the front thighs, and then everything kind of releases. That's the point. If you were hung on a washing line, if you were a piece of washing, that's where you'd be hung by. And then the water would sort of drip out of you through the spine. Inner armpits, extended outer armpits as well. Inner armpits always takes the lead. Outer armpit always follows that lead. And then what we call the under armpit, which is the part of the armpit nearest the thighs, draws back. Walk your feet towards each other. They don't have to be together, but just closer. And then raise, let's say the leg that's closest to me, raise that leg up, and then play. So you can bend, extend that leg in the air. You can lift the heel of the other leg and bring it down. Lots of ways in which you can play with that leg and hydrate the body in various different ways. And then we're going to attempt something exciting, thrilling. And that's all, just exciting and thrilling. So we're going to sweep the foot forward so it lands in place of its own hand. So as we come forwards, the hand will need to move out of the way, and then you might need to do it in 2 or 3 movements. The other knee comes down to the floor behind the pelvis. I suggest to lift and adjust the back knee 2 or 3 times because it should be behind the pelvis and not underneath it. Climb up onto your leg, breathe through your nose, stretch through the front groin and the inner groin. Find the pelvic floor. If you feel a lot of pressure on the back knee, you can release that by releasing upwardly, sort of giving to the stretch of the groin area. And you can follow that through if you wish with the arms. So instead of having downward pressure, there's upward release, which we have to give to. There's a stretch that goes from the inner groin across the pubis, eventually through the deep belly, into the sides of the lower spine. It wants to release up. We have to allow that with our breath. That's how you allow it, with the breath. Great. Okay, coming forwards and down, and in your own way, in your own time, back to Adho Mukha Svanasana, the down face dog. Take a breath or 2. Pad those paws into a deeper weave with the mat. So there's a merging of the molecules,
perfectly rational thing to suggest, actually, if you understand, or if you know a bit about particle physics. I'm not sure anyone understands it because it does things that are, pretty mind-blowing. So breathing and playing, get those hands really bedded in. It's really worth repeating. Heels back, groins up, back of the thighs forwards, front of the thighs up, extending out of the deep belly. Walk your feet a little closer to each other. As you did before, do again, but with the other leg. Raise it up. You can lift the heel and descend it off the lower leg. Some people like to do that. You can turn out while you bend or extend, or both, the upper leg. So there's a lot of scope for play here, which is useful. Eventually, with the knee bent, we're going to sweep the foot forward into the place where the hand was and lower the knee. Make sure it's behind the pelvis. So we're not only positioning it in terms of the stretch, but we're positioning it in terms of where the bursa, the fluid sacs, are placed in the knee. And subtle movements can make big differences in terms of your comfort, even millimeter adjustments. But remember also that releasing up is what's going to take a lot of pressure off the knee. So as we climb up onto the front leg, if you want to readjust the back knee, you can by lifting it and landing it. But then focus on the stretch of the inner groin. Focus on it with your breath. And give to that stretch with the breath. Raise also the arms if you want. That's optional. But keep focusing. If there's pain on the knee, that's just motivating us to give. And giving empties or opens our mind. Remember, I mentioned there had been a white Tara puja in here, and there are little reminders of it everywhere. The white shrine, there are white candles, there's white little lotuses around. So that, and remember the image of the dry wipe marker board being wiped clean, and that open possibility. If you were into Shaivism, you'd call that Shiva. If you're into Buddhism, you might just call that emptiness. Okay, coming forwards. And just to hands and knees. Catch your breath there. Take a 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths. Just wag the tail a little. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Go back to the first knee that we took into the pose. And this time we're just going to bring the knee forwards to place it directly behind its own wrist. So the wrist stays there, but it's the knee that moves to it. The foot moves diagonally across the body, and you stretch back your other leg. It may be that you'll need lots of little adjustments. Sometimes little adjustments make big differences. Trust your intuition. Toes can be tucked under or pointing back. We can be raised up or down on the elbows and forearms, or somewhere between the two. It's up to you. Or rather, it's up to our breath. If you're not sure whether to be up or down in the pose, most people will benefit most from being down, but not everyone. So if you are up, come down. If you're down, come up. Tuck the back toes under, bring the back knee forwards, come back to hands and knees and catch your breath. A little wag of the tail, hopefully intimating looseness. Breath, mirroring that looseness. Remember, yoga means union. From its sort of root, we get many, many meanings, as is the case with Sanskrit, which only has 2,000 roots to form all its verbs and its nouns and its adjectives, from just 2,000 roots. Whereas in our language, we're making up new verbs, all the time. Like, I'm just going to Google something. It's a new verb, isn't it? To Google.
You can't do that in Sanskrit. You've only got 2,000 roots, and out of those, 600 are used mostly. Okay, let's bring the other knee forwards directly behind the same wrist. The foot moves diagonally across the body. And we stretch back. Again, most people are going to feel best coming down to the forearms and the head, but some people feel good lifting as well, so that's another option. The jaw should be passive in this pose. It's one of the series of Kapotana poses, or Kapota poses, pigeon poses. Breath flowing. Okay, if you're down, come up. If you're up, come down. Could be psychological advice as well, I suppose. Come onto your hands and knees, catch your breath, draw soft, eyes soft, just a little wag of the tail. Take the arm that's furthest away from me, feed it underneath towards me, palm up. The other arm extends out to fingertips. Suchirandrasana. Take breath. Deep breath. So take breath means relax into it. Trust the breath. It's natural. It doesn't need, you don't need to. It symbolizes our willingness to not feel we have to control or own thoughts, feelings, emotions, physical sensations. They belong to the goddess. They're all part of everything. They're not personal. And if we realize that they're not personal, we won't make some of them entrenched. We won't deny some of them. We won't be too proud about some of them. And we'll be much more able to be spontaneous. Okay, come up, back to hands and knees. Catch deep breath for 7 or 4 or 12. It's just any amount. And then similarly, the other arm goes underneath, same thing. And you extend out. Breathe through the nose. Expressively, honestly, naturally. Really breathe some release into the deltoid that caps the shoulder. Okay, again. Good job. Means come up. And just briefly, we'll sit on a brick block if you've got one. And otherwise, you can use a regular block, a short end facing forwards. Blankets can be taken to go under the shins or just for a wraparound comfort. Siddhasana. Heels in line with each other and the midline of the body. And the buttocks drawn out and back. And upright but not rigid. The spine wants to be upright but not rigid. And so, it should have some fluidity, some softness, which is sort of accompanying the mental softness that goes with it. I'm just going to place the bija mantra Hung. We're going to install it, so it's installed for the day in the heart, and this will act as an anchor, because we know that action from the center is action that is open, action that has all choices available to it. It hasn't started from a biased position. So we want to be in the center. So to do that, we place a mantra. This mantra is Hong, which is sometimes associated with mother cow calling babies back to her. So it can be calling your mind back to the heart. So all your actions and thoughts come from it. So really, we're only going to do it once. So really make sure you visualize that you're placing it in the heart. You can imagine it sort of circling round, Hong, like that. And once you've placed it, it just carries on honging, right, all the day long. And even if you forget about it, there'll be a moment when you're like, oh, there's that hong in my heart. I can use that to, like a beacon, to orientate myself back to. So hands in prayer. We're going to take that deep breath and hong together. Inhale. Hong. And then a deep breath in, followed by a deep breath out. And several more deep breaths come and go. And now remember that that's there. You've installed it. You've planted it. You've placed it. Nyasa means to place in the heart. So just see if you can just still feel that there's that hong there. And we're going to, while we're still feeling it, we're going to lay down for just 2 minutes on the back, which will be long enough to totally surrender the body. So the body is released. All that's left in a way is the hong, right? So make sure you're warm. All that's left is the hong. There's a rush on for this one. Great. So all that's left, once we surrender everything, the weight, the muscle tension, all that's left is the hong. So as we surrender, that becomes, like as the clouds part, the sun becomes more clear. As the body relaxes here, as the body relaxes there, as the arms release, as the individual fibers of the muscles of the arms release, as the hands release, as the wrists release, as the chest and back release, as the head and tummy release, as the waist and pelvis release, as the thighs and buttocks release, as the knees and calves release, as the shins and feet release, as the whole body releases, all the organs inside the body release, skin, muscle, bone, organ, brain, hair, everything. Everything releases. And the hong becomes more and more apparent. We're going to wiggle the toes a little and feel into the body. That hong has become very apparent. Toes and fingers, arms and legs, everything kind of comes around, comes to. Eventually, we're going to bend our legs and place the soles of the feet on the floor and scoot the buttocks under. Take a deep breath, let the back release totally. Rolling onto your side, facing away from the shrine side of the room with the knees up. Tummy soft. And then rolling again in your own time. And bringing yourself round, maybe rub your eyes or stretch out an arm or a leg.
And when you feel ready to come up nice and easy from the side. May the merit gained in our acting in this way go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Om. Thanks, Rumors. And thanks, Zoomers. Thank you so much for your time today. Be happy and well. Lovely to see you. My chance. Yay. Great to see you all. Thank you. I'm scanning through you all so I can see your faces individually in the various ways in which you're waving to me. So I'm enjoying very much. And look forward to seeing you ASAP, which is short for as soon as possible. Okay, see you again. Bye.